All right, good evening, everyone. Just before we begin, as we always do, we have to thank our sponsors for this evening shir. This evening shir is sponsored by Yaakov and Devorah Shore, that are sponsoring in memory of Melech ben Michael. Mitchell Shore, who is Yaakov's brother, his neshama should have an aliyah through our learning. And it's really a wonderful opportunity that we have this evening to learn together. Today was the 116th yortzeit of one of the greatest Torah sages to ever live, especially in the Sephardic community. In today's current framework in the Torah world, the Ashkenazi yeshiva Torah world really is booming and continues to boom. Bli ayin hara. I mean, there are 10,000 yeshiva students learning in the Lakewood yeshiva, an Ashkenazi yeshiva. There are 7,500 students learning in the Mir yeshiva in Yerushalayim. It's an Ashkenazi yeshiva. Yeshiva University has 2,000 yeshiva students learning in Yeshiva University. The majority of the yeshiva students learning in the high-level yeshivas today are Ashkenazi yeshivos, with the exception of basically Yeshivat Porat Yosef in the old city of Yerushalayim. And Yeshivat Porat Yosef is a high-quality yeshiva, even by Ashkenaz standards, and is a Sephardic yeshiva. The majority of the yeshivas are all Ashkenazi. Rabbi Yosef, though, when he came onto the scene, he really changed things around in a very big way. Before Rabbi came to Eretz Yisrael, in the mid 20th century, it was not easy going for the Sephardic community. Even now, I mean, on some level. I know it's kind of silly to say, but there are biases and even segregation on some level between the Ashkenazi community and the Sephardic community. There are quotas that the public schools in Israel, even the yeshivas in Israel, I'm talking about the elementary schools, feel that the students that are of Sephardic descent have a much more difficult time getting into certain yeshivas. It's a reality and it's a problem, and many of the Gedolim are trying to help and fix the issue. One of the pride points, though, for the Sephardic community is that of the Ben Ish Chai, Rabbeinu Yosef Chaim of Baghdad. Rabbeinu Yosef Chaim of Baghdad was born in 1882 in Baghdad. His father and grandfather were actually both the chief rabbis of Baghdad before he took over as well. His father Moshe Chaim was the chief rabbi of Baghdad, and his grandfather Rav Eliyahu, Chacham Rav Eliyahu, was the chief rabbi of Baghdad, and Chacham Yosef Chaim, Zchut Yagin Aleinu, he then became the chief rabbi. Now, Rav Yosef Chaim was a single son to his parents. His parents only had one child because his mother was unable to have children. For 10 years, his mother was barren. After his parents were married, unable to have children. She went, she heard that there was a famous Mikubal, a famous great Sephardic sage that was living in Morocco, and she was in Baghdad. And there was a famous sage living in Morocco by the name of Rabbi Chacham Yaakov Abu Chatzera, the Abir Yaakov. He was a great grandfather of the Baba Sali, and she went on a long trip all the way from Baghdad to Morocco, which then was not an easy journey, and even today it's probably not a very easy journey, especially for a Jew to make such a trip. When made a trip all the way down to Morocco, and she received the blessing from the Abir Yaakov. The Abir Yaakov gave her a blessing. She blessed her that within a year she should have a child, and this child should be able to open up the eyes of the Jewish people. Within a year, I think it was 10 months later, the Ben Ish Chai, Chacham Yosef Chaim, was born, and it's exactly what he was famous for. He opened up the eyes of Sephardic Jewry to a whole new world, because if we were to try and give kind of like a bumper sticker to the Ben Ish Chai as to who he was, what was his bumper sticker in the world of Torah Jewry, he was perhaps the most eclectic of all the poskim. He was a posek, he was a halachic decider, he was a mikubal, which means that he was someone who understood Jewish mysticism, for lack of a better term. He understood basically, the way, what Kabbalah is basically, you have a house, and in order to know how a house functions, so, there's, basically like an owner's manual, right? There's, the water heater, there's, the gas, there's, the breaker system, right? There's all the things a person needs to know about the house, but then there's the architect of the house, right? And you know, how the house is even built in the first place. So that's kind of what Kabbalah is. It's the blueprint behind the rest of the Torah. It's what's underneath, the Torah that we, more generally learn, the revealed Torah, basically just, what Hashem wants from us. Kabbalah goes deeper than that to try and figure out, well, why is it that it's set up in this way? And the Ben Ish Chai had complete mastery over that. And he was able to weave the two together in a way that was even accessible to the layperson. He was a master in homiletics. He was a master in Gemara. He was a master in halacha, in literally all kol miktzos haTorah, every single area of the Torah. He didn't only have mastery in it, he was able to interweave them and able to present them. And it shows through, and we're going to give a few examples. We're going to go through about 3 different examples tonight of his style, and how his style, depending on the question, can manifest itself in very different ways. You could look at one tshuva, which we'll look at tonight, about warming up challah on Shabbos. And I'm talking about like simple thing, or I guess, low maintenance questions, right? But his approach to them is going to be vastly different than everyone else. And then another question we're going to see is a question related to what bracha did the Jews make on mun when they were traveling in the wilderness? The raining sustenance from heaven. What bracha did the Jews make on the mun? And again, his approach is coming from a place of more of a Kabbalistic approach, or a very creative approach. And then as we go through the questions we're going to be presenting tonight, another very low maintenance question we're going to be discussing tonight is the question of, after you eat milk or cheese, do you have to wait before eating meat? Now we know that after you eat meat, you have to wait 6 hours before eating any dairy, right? But what about after eating dairy? Do you have to wait before having meat, right? Like I have a cup of coffee here that I plan on drinking tonight, and then when I go home later this evening, after I finish doing some things here at shul, so I'm going to go home and I'm going to have my supper, which is fleishik. So am I allowed to have that supper, right? So, or do I have to wait? So again, we're going to see his approach being a very normative approach. He's so eclectic and all over the place. Now, I'll just make a disclaimer. Until about the 1970s, now, the Ben Ish Chai lived from 1832 to 1904, okay? So until about the 1970s, so for a very long time, for probably about 100 years, the Ben Ish Chai stood as the Sephardic posek. In the Sephardic world, for about 100 years, no one reigned over the Ben Ish Chai. The last word stopped with the Ben Ish Chai. The buck stopped with the Ben Ish Chai. Even other chief Sephardic rabbis in Israel would defer. They would bow to the opinions of the Ben Ish Chai. Before the Ben Ish Chai, there was the Chida, who was the Sephardic Chacham before him that kind of took that role. But for about 100 years, it was the Ben Ish Chai. What happened around the year 1970? That was when Rabbi Yosef came into into focus. Where Rabbi Yosef, when he came into focus, looked at the style of the Ben Ish Chai and looked at his influence and said, there's a whole hodgepodge over here of Sephardic Jews following all of these very, non-normative customs. And it was like this whole hodgepodge of like people were doing a whole bunch of different things that was not done for literally hundreds of years. No one was doing these things. And everyone kind of started ignoring the writings of the Shulchan Aruch, which we know and we've spoken about many times, especially in this Wednesday night series, in this Wednesday night class, we've spoken about many times how the Shulchan Aruch, Rav Yosef Karo, was a halachic revolutionary that both worlds, the Sephardic world and the Ashkenazic world, really attached themselves to and looked at as the Bible when it came to Jewish codes as to what it is we have to do practically. And really we continued to look to the Shulchan Aruch until the Ben Ish Chai came onto the scene. People, really became drawn. There was a magnetic pull towards the Ben Ish Chai, following his ways. That lasted for about 100 years until Rabbi Yosef, who only passed away in 2014, until Rabbi Yosef in around the year 1975 really started to change things and put the focus back onto Rav Yosef Karo, the Shulchan Aruch, and the Beit Yosef. However, we continue, I say we because me being of Sephardic descent, we continue to look at the Ben Ish Chai as being a light, just as the bracha his mother was given from the Abir Yaakov, was given a blessing that your son should open up the eyes of the Jewish people. The Ben Ish Chai continues to open up our eyes. And let's just go through a few of those examples I was pointing out. So let me share my screen over here, and we'll go through a few of these fascinating opinions of the Ben Ish Chai. So this is a picture of the Ben Ish Chai. If you've never seen a picture, by the way, just a historical note, this picture of the Ben Ish Chai was taken when he was 25 years old. So I guess it was taken in the year 1857. It was 1857. 1857 was the year after his father passed away. His father passed away in 1856. The following year, this portrait was taken of the Ben Ish Chai. It's an amazing photo, and it's one of these photos where a picture can tell 1,000 words. Everything that at least I feel, and probably more than even what I said, but I feel as though everything we just described about the Ben Ish Chai, you almost can get from this picture. When you look at him, you could tell just his sheer essence of being someone that really was steeped in Torah. At least to me, Torah just exudes from the countenance of the Ben Ish Chai. It's an amazing, absolutely amazing photo. It's a real treasure that we have such a magnificent photo of the Ben Ish Chai. We don't have that about every gadol. Okay, so I want to go through a couple of these fascinating questions, very practical questions, at least the first two, and we're going to see even the third question, the bracha of man. Is also, you're going to be surprised of just how practical it is. But let's go through the first couple of questions. The question of warming up challah on Shabbos. So it's something that almost everyone does. I myself we warm up our challah on Shabbos. We take the challah, we wrap it up in some foil wrappings, some tin foil. We throw it onto the hot plate and we let it warm up in order so that we could have some delicious warm challah on Shabbos. My wife's challah is always delicious, whether it's warm or it's not warm. But when it's warm, it's even better. So we warm up the challah and we eat it. It's delicious, wonderful, okay, amazing. Now, why would we think that such a thing would be a problem? So we know that there is a prohibition on Shabbos of cooking. One is not allowed to cook on Shabbos. Okay? So with that said, that one is not allowed to cook on Shabbos. So that it only applies to cooking things that are raw. Okay, so if I have something raw or something undercooked and I cook it further, that would be a prohibition on Shabbos. However, if something is already completely cooked, so then we have a principle called ein bishul achar bishul. That once something is cooked, it can't be cooked again. It can't be cooked further. However, The Shulchan Aruch does say, though, that while that is true, one would not be allowed to, that one is allowed to, let's say, warm up food that is already cooked on Shabbos, because you're not going to cook it further. However, if something is baked, okay, and then I want to make it now cooked. Now you're kind of looking at me like crazy. What do you mean? What's the difference between something being baked or being cooked? So let me explain myself. So in halacha, there are really three forms of cooking. There is cooking through the medium of a liquid. There is cooking through the medium of dry heat, where you take something that's a batter and put it into dry heat. That's called baking, okay? And then there is cooking something that is raw over an open fire, okay? An open flame, that's called roasting, all right? So you have cooking, baking, and roasting. Now, why does this matter what, type of cooking method it is? So, and where did we get these from? So just right off the bat, where we got these different categories is straight from the Torah. The Torah talks about these three different types of cooking. It talks about the type of cooking through the medium of liquid, in the context of cooking meat and milk together. Lo tevashel gedi b'chalev imo. You're not allowed to cook a kid in its mother's milk. You're cooking in the medium of a liquid. That's part of the definition of cooking. There needs to be some sort of sauce, some sort of liquid medium. That is one of the definitions of cooking. There's a second definition of cooking, and that's baking. Where do we have baking in the Torah? So we have the baking of the lachem hapanim, of the showbreads in the temple. We have cooking of the shtei halechem, the sacrifice that took place on Shavuos. These come in the context of baking. Most famously, we have in the context of matzah, that matzah is baked, okay? Then there's the third type, and that's roasting, given in the context of the Karban Pesach, that the Paschal lamb needs to be roasted. The fact that the Torah differentiates these three different types of cooking methods means that we treat them as three completely different cooking methods. Comes along Rav Hai Gaon, who's one of the Gaonim, a very, very early commentator to the Gemara, a halachics, someone who was paskening shilas in the early part of the 10th century. Comes Rav Hai Gaon and says, well, hold on one second. If I were to take something that is, let's say, already cooked in, let's say, the medium of in the medium of a liquid, and now I want to take that same item and put it on a spigot and roast it over a fire. Now, one could say, what do you mean? It's already cooked. Ein bishul achar bishul. On Shabbos, there should be nothing wrong with me doing such a thing. Why? Because once the meatball, let's say, which is cooked in the medium of tomato sauce, is already cooked, and now I put it onto the fire, so it's already cooked. It's not going to cook more. But hold on one second, says Rabbi. I'm changing its status. It was cooked through the medium of a liquid, but now it's becoming roasted meatballs. It's a different type of meatball now. It's a new dish. You've now canceled everything that happened in the past. Says Rav Hai Gaon, that would be prohibited on Shabbos. He even goes as far to say that that would be prohibited on a biblical level. It's not just a rabbinic enactment, some sort of a stringency. No. This is a biblical prohibition to do such a thing. And he says the same would apply. Let's say I have something that's baked, okay? I could have a challah, let's say, that then I take the challah and I put it into boiling water. That would be a problem on Shabbos. Why? Because I'm now taking a baked item and making it cooked. I'm putting in the medium of a liquid. So now it's becoming a completely new dish. So hold on one second. If I slice challah and stick it onto my hot plate, what's going to happen? It's going to get toasty. That's roasting. You're going to be roasting the challah. So isn't that a problem? Take a look at what the Ben Ish Chai has to say over here on this question. Because basically the way we're presenting it right now, based on the Shulchan Aruch, based on the Rav Hai Gaon, based on a basic understanding of different cooking methods and the laws of Shabbos, it would then come out that such a thing would be prohibited to do. Im muter lahaniach lechem afui, asked the Ben Ish Chai in his Sefer Rav Pe'alim. This is his work of responsa. He says, Im muter lahaniach lechem afui, is one allowed to take baked bread and stick it al hatanur b'Shabbos, stick it on the oven on Shabbos, kedei lakshoso, in order to make it hard, make it crunchy, make it toasty. Am I allowed to do such a thing? One of my favorite treats growing up was shalashuris. My mom would take the leftover challah from the day, she'd slice it up, put it onto the hot plate and it get toasted, and she'd take tuna salad and put it on top of the bread, and I'd have a delicious toasted tuna sandwich for Shabbos. Shalashuris, is this permitted to do or not? So says the Ben Ish Chai, Ra'isi Sholu Meshev. Right away, right off the bat, from reading this line, we learn so much history over here and so much about his personality. Ra'iti, I saw in the Shol Umeshev Til Yasa. So who's the Shol Umeshev? Shol Umeshev is Rav Shol Nathanson. Rav Shol Nathanson, Marty, correct me if I'm wrong, he may or may not be on your sheet, but I'm pretty sure Rav Shol Nathanson was a contemporary of the Ben Ish Chai. I'm pretty sure he passed away in the late part of the 19th century. He was a Yeki Posek, Rav Shol Nathanson, a Yeki Posek. What is the Ben Ish Chai, the chief rabbi of Baghdad, doing, quoting a German Posek? They are living in two completely different worlds. Again, shedding light on the fact that the Ben Ish Chai was an extremely eclectic and open, almost you could say open-minded, relatively speaking, open-minded, especially in this context, to all different types of Jews and different areas of Psak Halacha. Okay, so he quotes from the Shol Meshev, Shol Nathanson, that he thought that it was a problem. But then he says, V'achar ha'iyun matzati. But after a lot of research, I found, Agev churtav lodak, that although he's very sharp, although Rav Shol Nathanson is very sharp, he didn't get this one exactly right. That it's not prohibited to warm up your challah pieces on Shabbos. He says that it's not a problem that you're going to be warming up the pieces of challah, that it's going to become crunchy. Here the bread is completely baked. And he goes on to explain. He says that this is not under the definition of im bishul achar afiyah, that you're going to be cooking it or you're going to be roasting it after it's already cooked. Why? Because it's already taken on its complete form of challah. Basically, when you take the slices of challah and you stick it on the hot plate, it gets crunchy, it gets toasted, you wouldn't call that roasted bread. It's baked bread that's a little crunchy. It doesn't take on a completely new form, unlike the meatball. Remember the meatball example? We said that if you took the meatball that was cooked in a liquid and you stuck it over an open flame, you stuck it over a fire, what's going to happen? It's going to become roasted. Yeah, it's going to really become roasted. It's going to become completely different. It's going to taste like a completely different dish. But if you have a piece of toast, okay, and someone bites into a toasted sandwich, no one is going to, when they bite into it, think, oh, this doesn't even taste like bread. It doesn't change the status of it. It's still exactly the way it was before. It's just a little bit more crunchy right now, and therefore he thinks that there'd be no problem with this. And this is the derech achilahu. This is the way that such a thing is eaten. This is the way that the bread is eaten. By the way, you should just know that there were many poskim that disagreed with this approach of the Ben Ish Chai, namely Rav Shol Nathanson, The Minchas Chinuch thought that it's a problem. Rav Yosef Babad, the chief rabbi of Chernobyl, passed away in 1878. Many other of his contemporaries thought that it was a problem warming up Chal in this way, but he thought it's not a problem. And in fact, Rav Yosef also agrees that it is not a problem. It says Rav Yosef, though, in deference to the Shulchan Aruch and in deference to these other poskim, it probably would be better that if you want to heat up your challah in such a way that it's really going to become toasted and crunchy, better to heat it up in a way where it's really not going to affect it that greatly. Basically, try and do it in a way where it's not going to make the challah crunchy, but rather just warmed up. That it somehow can get hot on the inside without getting crunchy on the outside, which is a difficult thing to do. And says Rav Yosef Zatzal that if it ends up being crunchy, there's no problem with it, for sure not. But it would be a good practice to try and warm it up in a way where it wouldn't leave a crunchy exterior onto the challah. Okay, moving on to the next question that the Ben Ish Chai dealt with. So, as we just pointed out, this question we just learned from the Ben Ish Chai was from his Sefer Rav Pa'alim, which were his works, in response to people asking questions, and he would respond to the questions. Again, he was a posek for a very, very large Jewish community. His sefer that he really became famous for is the Sefer Ben Ish Chai. The Ben Ish Chai was a work of Shabbos afternoon classes that the Ben Ish Chai used to give that actually was over a few years. I believe it spanned 2 or maybe 3 years that he gave these classes. And over the course of those 2 or 3 years that he gave these classes, basically intertwining between some Jewish law, Jewish thought, mysticism, and really intertwining all of them, as he was really famous for. Later on, it was collected and published by the Sefer by the name Ben Ish Chai, and really that's what he's known for. You see, it's called Ben Ish Chai. Then Shana Shnia, the second year. So this is in the second year of classes. He gave this class Parsha Shlach Lecha, on the Parsha of Parshas Shlach, which is read in May. So this is given in around the spring. The Ben Ish Chai was giving such a Shabbos afternoon class. What was the question? The question was about having meat after you eat dairy. So we know the Gemara teaches us that it is a practice that Klal Yisrael has taken upon themselves to wait between eating meat and milk. Why is it that we wait between eating meat and milk? So this is a discussion between the Rambam and Rashi, probably our 2 greatest rabbinic authorities since Moshe Rabbeinu. From Moshe Rabbeinu all the way through the generations, all the way through the writing of the Mishnah, probably all the way through the Gemara. Then there was Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, the Gemara says, was possibly just as great of a Torah scholar as Moshe Rabbeinu. But then after that point, until the coming of the Rambam and Rashi, really no one held a candle to either of them. Rashi in his way of elucidation, and the Rambam in his way of codification and defining principles in Jewish law, really there was none as comparable to the 2 of them. But they have a disagreement. Why is it that it is prohibited to eat dairy after eating meat? So Rashi says the problem is that you are going to still find pieces of meat in your teeth. And we want to take every measure possible to make sure that you are not going to be mixing any meat and milk. So if you're still going to have basar ben shinehem, you're still going to have meat stuck in your teeth, and then you're going to go along and eat a bowl of cereal. So what's going to happen is that then the bowl of cereal, the milk, or the coffee you're going to drink is going to end up getting mixed up, and the flavors from the meat and the milk are going to mix in with one another. So you have to wait, the Gemara says, the Talmud says, you have to wait the length of the course of a meal. That's how long you have to wait between eating meat and eating dairy, the length of a course of a meal, which basically, depending on where you live, could mean different things, right? For some people, they eat every hour. For other people, they eat every 3 hours. Some people eat every 6 hours. And depending on your culture, which our culture is basically we eat every 6 hours. And when I say every, I mean between the two big meals. Yet between lunch and between dinner is about a 6-hour period from midday until sunset. And that's around, and it's because of that. That's why the Shulchan Aruch says we wait 6 hours between eating meat and eating milk. But what about when it's flipped? I didn't mention the Rambam's opinion. The Rambam says it's because the meat is still in your digestive tract. Okay, it's still digesting, and if you're going to be having the dairy, so then the dairy and the meat is going to be digesting at the same time. That the Rambam thinks is a problem. Now, hold on. What about if we flip it? What about if we have milk and then meat? So let's see what the Ben Ish Chai says. So right away he says, well, before we skip that part, I skipped that paragraph. Basically, he says in the earlier paragraph, in just the previous paragraph before, he said that, well, if you're just having a cup of milk or a cup of coffee, there's no concern of either. Basically, it's going to digest very quickly, and it's not going to end up being stuck in your teeth. Okay, so if you're just having milk and milk products, basically just, you're having yogurt or you're having coffee or you're having, a bowl of cereal, things like that, we're really not concerned that the milk is either going to be stuck in your teeth or it's still in your digestive tract. All you really have to do is just wash out your mouth. That's what it says in Shulchan Aruch. You have to wash out your mouth and then you're good enough. However, aval ba'ochel gvina. However, if one eats cheese is a solid. It's something that in its the oily, fatty block of cheese. It's something of substance. So if someone were to eat cheese, even though according to the letter of the law, probably it'd be good enough just to clean out your mouth. You brush your teeth. You wipe your mouth, you wipe your face, and wash your hands. That's good enough. In order to eat your hamburger right away. That's the Ben Ish Chai. Most people agree with that. That's really all you have to do between eating dairy, even cheese, and eating meat. Mikol makom, however, kfarnagu lishahos zman b'neim. However, it is good, and we already started taking upon ourselves the custom to wait a little bit of time. Now, how long are we supposed to wait? There are some that wait an hour between eating dairy and eating meat. Also, it'd be good if it was part of a different meal, meaning even if your meal is an hour later or 2 hours later, better to wait till a new meal. Okay, this is what he says is, some people do. He says some wait 6 hours, some wait 3 hours. Okay. First of all, he quotes from the Chida, Chacham Yosef David Azulai, who was before him the Sephardic posek. We'll have to have another class about the Chida and his influence and what he was able to accomplish in his life, which is unbelievable. But take a look at what he says. Then he says, Upo Irenu Baghdad. However, in our city, in Baghdad, look, he's speaking as you have to read it like he's giving the class. He's speaking to his group of members of his community and saying, okay, you're all looking at me and I'm telling you, there are some people that wait 3 hours, some people that wait 6 hours, some people that wait an hour. You have to wash your hands, wash your mouth. Well, okay, the Chida did it. Okay, but Rabbi, tell me, what am I supposed to do? So he says, Po Irenu Baghdad. However, here in our community, in Baghdad, Anachnu Morin Kach, we do the following. Im hi gevina kasha, if it is a hard cheese. What's a hard cheese? Hard cheeses, says the Ben Ish Chai, is she'avar alea shisha chadashim o yoser, which is normative opinion. If it aged for at least 6 months, So aged cheeses, says the Ben Ish Chai, if you ate aged hard cheese, then shohen shisha sha'os. You have to wait 6 hours. 6 hours. I know that it probably sounds surprising to a number of you. I know when I first learned this, it was surprising to me, because who's ever done that before? I mean, between eating, I'll give you an example. You have a block of Parmesan. You ever have shaved Parmesan cheese? Okay, Parmesan cheese ages for anywhere between 9 to 12 months. Right? It's aged cheese. It's definitely more than 6 months. Aged cheeses, the concern is that because of its fatty content, it's going to either remain in your teeth or it's going to take a long time to digest. And therefore, you have to treat it like meat, which when you stop and think about it, it makes a lot of sense, because what would really be the difference? If it presents the same issues as meat, so then why is it that it would be any different just because it's dairy? So this is what the Ben Ish Chai says to do, and this is what he tells his community to do. He points out that this is the minhag in Yerushalayim as well. That the minhag in Yerushalayim is to wait 6 hours, but not just for hard cheeses, for any types of cheeses. If someone has a piece of pizza, they'd have to wait 6 hours before they eat meat. That was the custom in Yerushalayim. I think today, though, the custom really is only for hard cheeses. One would have to wait between eating hard cheeses and having meat. Rav Belsky Zatzal. Rav Belsky was one of the poskim for the OU. Rav Belsky and Rav Shechter were the two senior poskim for OU kosher. Rav Belsky was the Rosh Yeshiva of Torah Vodaas. Really, especially on the American scene, was one of the Poskei Hador, was one of the halachic deciders for our generation, especially in the area of kashrus. I mean, anyone that goes to the supermarket to buy kosher food, any marking you're going to see, not just OU. You see OU, you see the Chaf K, you see the Star K. The influence that Rav Belsky had over that symbol ending up on that can of refried beans, it is without question. He has his hands directly on it. So Rav Belsky said, though, that let's say, for example, you have the shaker cheese. You get from the supermarket either the Romano cheese or the Parmesan cheese. I think they sell at Ralph's. That the shakeable Parmesan cheese. My kids call it sprinkle cheese. That you sprinkle the cheese on a piece of pizza or on some noodles. That is something you would not have to wait 6 hours for, said Rav Belsky, because it's already lost so much of its structure that we're not concerned that it's going to get stuck in your teeth or it's going to be hard to digest. I just want to end off with one last question from the Ben Ish Chai. And it's when I first came across this tshuva, it was quoted by a responsa from Rabbi Yosef, that he did not quote the author of this responsa. He quoted the work. I was reading a work from Rabbi Yosef about the question of what bracha do you make on hydroponic fruits and vegetables? What bracha do you make on hydroponic fruits and vegetables? Now, why would we think that the bracha would not just be, let's say, ha'etz, if I eat an orange that was grown hydroponically, or I ate a cucumber that was grown hydroponically? So a cucumber, the bracha of a cucumber is ha'adama. So therefore, a hydroponically grown cucumber should be no different, right? It's a cucumber is a cucumber, right? You show me a cucumber, it smells like a cucumber, it tastes like a cucumber, looks like a cucumber, feels like a cucumber. It's a cucumber, and therefore it should be hadama. Surprisingly, though, most most opinions would say that such a cucumber you would make a shahakol on. The same bracha you make on water or on candy. You make a shahakol on the cucumber. Why would you make a shahakol on a hydroponically grown cucumber? Which, by the way, here just up the road at UCSD, there's a whole garden out in the back of UCSD. Right on, there's a garden right on the corner of Torrey Pines, right over here, a half a mile away. There's a full hydroponic garden over there, and they have hydroponically grown cucumbers. And if someone were to eat those cucumbers, you would make a shahakol on. Why would you make a shahakol? Because it technically did not grow from the ground. Where did it grow from? It grew from out of water and the air and the nutrients that were delivered through that process, but not from the ground. And therefore, you make a shahakol on it. Take it a step further. You know what the Chazon Ish said about this? The Chazon Ish and Rabbi Yosef and many other poskim said that you're allowed to work on your hydroponic farm during the Shemitah year. The year that we have to leave the land fallow and you're not allowed to do any agricultural work. That's only agricultural work in the field, not when it is grown in water or in this type of an environment where you're not actually working the ground. And therefore, you could even work it during Shemitah. So, Rabbi Yosef, during his discussion of this matter, quotes from the responsa of Torah Lishma. I thought to myself when I saw this, I said, I've never heard of this sefer, Torah Lishma. So I did some research to try and find out who it is. So I looked around and I saw, it's written by a Yecheskel Kalchi. Who is Yecheskel Kalchi Kachli Hakatan, the small one? I've never heard of this posik before. So as any person doing research would do, I Googled Yecheskel Kachli. Who is this fellow? And after looking around in all different places, I'm trying to find it. I can't find it anywhere. And eventually I found another writing of Rabbi Yosef where he refers to the same responsa in a different context of Torah Lishma, but he quotes the name of the Ben Ish Chai. I said, hold on, it's not from the Ben Ish Chai. It's not from Chacham Yosef Chaim. It's from Yecheskel Kachli. So why? So I was very confused. Upon further research, I found out that for whatever reason, it was for some mystical reason, the Ben Ish Chai wrote a work. He ghost wrote a sefer, a work on halacha, where it's really intertwining halacha and mysticism, very conceptual halachic questions, very esoteric. But he wrote it as a ghostwriter. He wrote with a different pen name. He called himself Yecheskel Kachli. You know why? Because he had a chazon. Now, a chazon, a vision, is not nevuah. The Ben Ish Chai was not a navi. He wasn't a prophet. But he probably had Ruach HaKodesh, and he had a dream. And in that dream, he was approached by this fellow by the name of Yecheskel Kachli. And this Yecheskel Kachli said, you, Ben Ish Chai, you, Yosef Chaim, are a Gilgul. You are you are living on a life that I did not complete. You are living we share a neshama, and you are now living on the life for me. Okay? So how am I supposed to complete this person's life? So said the Ben Ish Chai, well, I should write a sefer. And he wrote it as this individual. He didn't even ghostwrite it. It's as if this individual was supplanted here and this person wrote this work. And it's not a small work. This is a work with about 200 responsa of halachic questions. It is 376 pages long. This is a serious piece of Torah literature that is quoted by poskim, written by a person from the dead, written by Yecheskel Kachli, ghost written by the Ben Ish Chai. So what is the question that the Ben Ish Chai is dealing with over here? The question is, Sha'alach Chacham Echad, a certain Chacham, a certain wise individual asked me, Hayadorish kol ikar birchas hanan, and he was learning the laws of making brachos on food. Hulavar hatov min hara, v'omer lefizeh yishlomer d'Yisrael lo berchu alaman. He thought that the Jewish people did not make a blessing on man. Shahai yored min hashamayim, because the sustenance fell from heaven, and the only context we have about making blessings on food are things that are growing on this world, not from a different world. And therefore, he felt as though there was no blessing on the man. However, comes along the Ben Ish Chai, and he says, Yorenu Hamora Litzdaka. He says that this posek wants to know what my opinion is. Tshuva. And he says here, I'll give you the following answer. Skipping ahead for time purposes, he says, V'nira li Yisrael hayim mevarchen alaman. He says the Jewish people certainly did make a blessing on the man. What was the blessing that they made? Hamamtir lechem min hashamayim. That as the man came down from heaven, and they were about to eat it, they would say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. They wouldn't say Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. They'd say Hamamtir, that would rain lechem, bread, min hashamayim, from the heavens. That is the blessing they would use. Where did he come up with this language? Raining bread from the sky. Where did he come up with that? So he says, "Kamo lishna dekra," because it's a pasuk in the Torah. Dechsev, hineni mamtir lachem lechem min hashamayim. That God says, "I am going to bless you with raining bread from heaven," and therefore, that must be the blessing that the Jewish people made when they would eat their man. Now, how do we know that they even made a blessing on the man? So the Gemara in Brachos said that we know that they benched on man. They made a berachas hamazon, they benched, because Moshe Rabbeinu instituted benching, and they benched on the man that they ate. So therefore, we know, says the Ben Ish Chai, that they must have made a blessing on the man as well, but not hamotzi lechem na'aretz. They did not make any blessing at all. They said hamamtir lechem and hashamayim, a blessing that we in this day and age have never made, but Jews at some point in history did make. And the Ben Ish Chai, in his unique style, in his persona that is Kulo Torah, dealing with so many different questions in Jewish thought, Jewish practice, Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah, with complete mastery, was able to approach all of them. Zchut yagen aleinu, that his merit should bestow upon us, just like the blessing that the Abir Yaakov gave to his mother. It is a tremendous chus for us to have learned for the yortzeit of the Ben Ish Chai, about the Ben Ish Chai and the great deeds, the great decisions that the Ben Ish Chai made. Okay, we'll stop here. Again, thank you so much to Devorah and Yaakov. If anyone would like to sponsor a class, I'd be more than happy to help you, and it would be greatly appreciated. Really appreciated. Great learning with everyone. Thanks so much. I can hang on for 2 minutes, although I'm 7 minutes late for my chavrusa, but I can hang on 2 minutes because I can see that my chavrusa is actually here, so not such a problem.
Thank you, Rabbi.